Well, I think I said earlier that it's a he creates a situation that he's comfortable with psychologically. No, not comfortable with, familiar with, because there's a difference. Because you can be uncomfortable, but it still be familiar. And so it's understandable that he's uncomfortable with it, but it's also something that he's familiar with. Therefore, he will create it. Well, like the menu in the restaurant. You go into a restaurant and you look at the menu. What do you order? You order what you know, or you order what you don't know? You order what you know most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
You could say now and then, I'll try something different. I've never tried this before. It will be an experiment. But most people will order what they know from the menu.
Okay.
They choose the they choose the slightly more comfortable option for themselves. And it's not really about comfort. It's about familiarity. It's about what they understand. If children grow up with their parents arguing, the children tend to argue a lot because that's the norm for them. That's normal. That's normal for them. So perhaps here's a theory. Maybe here's just because I don't have enough information, but here's a theory. Your husband steps back and watches people argue because he's reverting to his childhood state of watching his parents argue with each other. Now, I don't know if his parents had conflicts or not, but there's another option, possibility. Who knows what he witnessed when he was 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. Right? So, people who are quiet in public often have a lot to say in private. So, or people are just introverts, right? But then introverts are not without. Nothing is without reason. Nothing exists without reason. There's a reason for the sun to come up in the morning. There's a reason for every single thing that happens. The origins of bullying. Let me read something. The desire to survive is an instinct that was developed since the beginning of life, which is the competition for resources against other species. This survival instinct, along with a competitive atmosphere, has remained the same as the human race has evolved. Quote from Donegan 2012, the consistent drive to surpass others and surmount obstacles has become an ideology. Bullying is unintentionally instilled as a survival tactic from a young age. Bullying tactics may include spreading social rumors, pressurizing others to obtain the right answers, intimidating others, name-calling, stealing belongings, hitting or threatening other students. Gosh, it just sounds like the school. It's just like a description of the school that you were working in. It's interesting. Okay, here's a theory for you. Bullying is a form of abuse. Abuse requires an abuser and an abused person.
Mm-hmm.
An abuser must know that the abused person is not going to fight back.
Mm-hmm.
They must understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's take an extreme example of this to understand this. Let's take an extreme example. The extreme example is pedophilia, right? Where the adult must know and be 100% sure that the child is not going to communicate with anybody. Because if the child communicates with the right person in authority, the right adult, the pedophile is going to prison. And you know what happens to pedophiles in prison, right? They don't come out again, except in a body bag or a large pine box. Because most of the people in prisons were victims of pedophiles, and that's why they ended up committing crime, but that's another story. So the abuser must know that the abused person is isolated, is not going to be able to fight back. And then they can begin their systematic abuse. Now, in order to know that the abused person is not, the victim is not going to fight back, they must collect data, information, or pick up signals from the victim that the victim is isolated. Could it be that in some way you communicate or signal to the people around about you that you are in some way isolated, on the outside, distant, disconnected?
Mm-hmm.
You see, if the lion stalks its prey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Looks around, looks for the weakest, what it thinks is the weakest member of the group, and attacks what it thinks. Now, it might not be the weakest member, but it's just judging from the signals and information. In an institutional environment, bullying is the norm. It's a normal thing in an institutional environment, and therefore students would conform to the norm, which is the victim must be bullied, and would continue the process. The students would pick up on the signals that this teacher and the other teachers think it's okay to victimize this person. Therefore, because it's okay for them, it's okay for us, and we will do it.
Maybe.
And that would be setting the standard for what is normal. And normal within that environment. And I think that when you get out of the environment, I think normal changes. Look, you can have the biggest idiot, empty-headed student that you can ever communicate with in your classroom. But you can meet them in the supermarket and they'd be the friendliest person on the planet. It's interesting. I always remember meeting teachers outside of school when I was a student and thinking, wow, they're actually kind of normal people. Because the impression that I got when I went to school was that teachers were people to be afraid of. They were intimidating. And I was always very confused if I met them in a social setting where they were, they would be sort of semi-polite to you in the classroom, and then you'd meet them in a social setting and they'd be really friendly, and I would be confused as like, okay, so who are they? Who are these people? Are they the really nice, friendly people here, or are they, the character that they are in school? It's really, really interesting because my mother was a teacher in the school where I went to school, so other teachers would come to visit us, and I would see them when they came to visit as different people. Because they were not teachers, they were not in the school. They didn't have the power that they had there. Because remember, doors are ports, and each time we travel through a portal, things can change. You walk into a school, things change. people start adopting certain kinds of behaviors which might be highly unnatural in the normal world. Especially visible in Britain if, people got their school uniforms on. It's very visible. These are the teachers, these are the students. Hierarchical, military type of system.